Welcome, everyone. I'm Steve Adubato, coming to you remotely. I'm confident we will be in a studio, hopefully NJTV studio at some point down the road. But right now, we're coming to you remotely. We're thrilled to be joined once again by Tim Sullivan, the CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Tim, good to talk to you.
Great to be with you, Steve. Thanks so much for having me on, and sure wish we were together.
Yeah, we will be. We will be. But innovation,
No doubt.
adaptation, disruption, if you will, the name of the game. So let's talk small business. The Economic Development Authority is doing what specifically for those businesses, particularly the smaller ones, that continue to struggle and suffer and try to make payroll and, frankly, just stay alive?
You know, from the very beginning of this crisis, obviously this is first and foremost a public health crisis, but right behind it, it's an economic crisis, and it's one that's being experienced, you know, really acutely by the small business community, particularly minority and women-owned firms. So Governor Murphy has recognized from the very, very earliest days that while we fight the good fight on the public health side, we've got to support small business. So through programs that the governor's allocated funding for, we've now funded nearly 17,000 small businesses. We will end up investing a little more than $100 million of mostly federal relief money to support small businesses. And as you said, survive and adapt and thrive in this very, very difficult and challenging period.
Tim, let's talk about the assistance, the Small Business Emergency Assistance Loan Program, okay? Mm-hmm. Who is getting it? What are they getting? And frankly, how do people access it?
Yeah, so the loan program that we started running back in the spring was pretty quickly oversubscribed. That's been really a really important tool. That's up to $100,000 of a 10-year loan, zero interest for the first couple of years, low interest in the back half. And that's been a really important lifeline, particularly for businesses like restaurants that maybe had a little trouble accessing some of the SBA federal programs.
The Small Business Administration?
Small Business Administration, that's right. The PPP program, which flooded, added a lot of money to the system, didn't get it to everyone everywhere. And so our program has been kind of filling in the gaps there. Particularly, lots of minority and women-owned firms are able to access that program. Around 20% of the firms that we've funded through that loan program are women-owned, about 14-15% are minority-owned. And so we're really trying to reach businesses that have historically not been able to access not just emergency programs, but all kinds of capital support programs. The grant program that Governor Murphy's been championing, the average employee size for those companies that we've supported, which is almost 15,500 companies now, is under 3. So really small companies, trying to get the smallest of the small companies that sometimes fall through the cracks of programs, even the most well-intentioned programs.
So Tim, let's stay on the issue of minority-owned businesses for a second. People are going to see a graphic up on the screen of a series that we've been doing now, I'm going to say for about 4 or 5 months. It is going to be done for the foreseeable future. It is a series of conversations around, quote unquote, confronting racism. To what degree, for minority-owned businesses, is the challenge of access to capital and surviving this? By the way, everyone is suffering on one level or another, but disproportionately, businesses run, owned, operated by people who, in fact, are African-American, Hispanic, but minorities. A, why is it harder for them? And B, why is it such a high priority to deal and help them?
Yeah, this is an issue that was true and a big problem prior to the COVID crisis, and has only been exacerbated and made more visible. You hit the right word. You said structural racism early on in the question. That's, at the end of the day, that's the very complex and simple answer at the same time, answer to the question. Minority-owned firms, when the sun is shining and times are good economically, still struggle to access traditional bank capital. That's far lower rates than the rest of the economy.
And that is structural and institutional racism in many situations. Sorry for interrupting, Tim, but that is much of the reason for that inability to get the capital that others who are white get access to. It's just a fact.
Yeah, it's an undeniable one. I think any efforts to sort of avoid discussing the sort of the core issue there, avoid the core issue. There's been lots of talk and initiatives over the years and over the decades, and we still haven't cracked the code on this. And we're working hard to, under Governor Murphy's leadership, really improve the way that we deploy capital when it's particularly emergency capital. This most recent grant round that the governor provided funding for, about a third of the money we reserve for businesses located in Opportunity Zone eligible census tracts. These are overwhelmingly minority-owned business concentrations, census tracts. And so we've been able to reach, at least a third of the money in these grant programs that we're running will go to businesses in those zones, and that's had a huge impact.
And by the way, let's clarify, without going into great detail, Opportunity Zones, we're actually at the conference, the announcement between Governor Murphy and United States Senator Cory Booker when these Opportunity Zones were talked about. It's federal legislation signed at the time. The president, as we do this program now, is President Trump. He signed that legislation to create these opportunity zones, to create more opportunity for minority businesses in certain communities, in certain tracts, if you will. So you're using that information as to who those companies are to target some of these state grants, correct?
Yeah, exactly. It's a really good map, because those census tracts are, and by the way, we're using all 700 and something eligible census tracts, not just the ones that were designated formally as opportunity zones. These are, high poverty, high unemployment, low income census tracts before the crisis. Those problems have only gotten worse in the last 6 months, and so it's an imperfect but pretty good map for where there are long-term pockets of distress economically. And so we're really trying to target resources to those communities, because again, it's a public health crisis, it's an economic crisis, and we've been reminded, from the summer on through the fall, that this is also happening amidst a long-standing crisis of justice, particularly for minority communities in our state and in our country.
Absolutely. By the way, with the Economic Development Authority, together with our not-for-profit, we're doing a series of programs focusing on innovation, right? Particularly in these challenging times. So in that spirit, together with the Board of Public Utilities, which regulates the utilities in this state, there is an initiative together with the EDA, the Economic Development Authority, in which you're trying to support offshore wind and clean energy projects, correct? Put that in context for us.
Yeah, so, renewable clean energy, I think, represents one of the most important growth opportunities for the state of New Jersey. And this was true, again, pre-pandemic, and it only became more true because of the crisis, because it's an industry and a sector that, compared to things like restaurants and gaming and malls and entertainment, isn't as impacted, frankly, by the challenges of density. Offshore wind, New Jersey has a real chance to be the capital of the American offshore wind industry, where Governor Murphy, along with Senate President Sweeney and Chairman Bertuccelli, announced back in June their support, and the governor was advancing plans for the New Jersey wind port down in Salem County and Lower Aloys Creek. This is the first purpose-built offshore wind port where we'll have manufacturing and the mobilization of these projects. We're talking about thousands of jobs at that site and the potential to create tens of thousands of jobs in the New Jersey economy.
Excuse me, Tim, for interrupting. You're confident of that, because there have been some questions from Senator Sweeney and I think Assemblyman Bertuccelli and others wanting to make sure that it creates the number of jobs, the kinds of jobs that are being promised.
Yeah, I think we want to make sure that all the promises that are made are promises that are kept as well. I think the long-term trajectory for offshore wind is incredibly strong. We're talking about an industry that across, from Virginia up to Maine, is poised to invest $100 billion in its infrastructure. We want New Jersey to get more than its fair share of the jobs and economic opportunity, both on the construction and installation side, but also the manufacturing, the R&D, the professional services that come along with it. I think the long-term future for offshore wind is quite bright.
Tim Sullivan is the CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. I believe the website for the Economic Development Authority has been up throughout this segment if you want to find out more. Tim, thank you for joining us. All the best to you and your family, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Steve, be well. Thank you so much for having me on. Great to be with you.
You got it. I'm Steve Adubato. We'll be right back.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by Hackensack Meridian Health, the New Jersey Education Association, New Jersey Sharing Network, New Jersey Board of Public Utilities, Clean Energy Program, Operating Engineers, Local 825, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, Berkeley College, and by IBEW Local 102. Promotional support provided by NJ On Air and by Jaffe Communications.
I could feel my lungs fill with oxygen, and I got my life back.
The Sharing Network means to me hope, life, and everything.
The sharing network was a lifeline to me when I really needed it.
We are an organ procurement organization.
The core purpose of the New Jersey Sharing Network is to save and enhance lives.
To honor those who gave.
Pay tribute to those who received.
Offer hope to those who continue to wait.
And remember the lives lost while waiting.
For the gift of life.